God is always at work, constantly working and leading his people into new seasons. Even if you don't see it, he is still shifting things right now. The chaos, uncertainty, and unpredictability around him doesn't stop him. From the beginning, God has not been stagnant. He has led his people from one level of faith to another, taking them through new stages and places. Abraham was called to leave his homeland without knowing where he was going. Moses was transformed from a shepherd in the desert into a liberator of a nation. The apostles were just fishermen, but they became world changers. God continues to move his people toward a greater purpose. The question is not whether God is changing, but whether you are ready to follow that change. Some have prayed, sought his will, desired guidance, and now change has come. But remember, God's change is not always convenient or comfortable. Often it comes in the form of disruptions, closed doors, or situations that no longer feel right. Look at how he changed history through Jesus Christ. The people expected a king on a throne, but the Messiah came as a baby in a manger. They expected a warrior to overthrow Rome, but he came as a servant to destroy sin. The religious leaders were outraged by his ways because they broke the old ways they considered the norm. When God acts to change things, he demands faith. God is making a big change, disrupting the comfort-oriented Christianity where people are content to attend church without ever stepping into his purpose. He is shaking up prayers that seek blessings but avoid true transformation. At the same time, he is disrupting places where people have built security outside of his plan. You may feel disruption right now. Jobs that were once stable are becoming unstable. Relationships you once relied on are changing. Or maybe things that once brought you joy are no longer the same. All of these are signs of divine change. This is not a random act. God is leading you out of the ordinary into something better. But the challenge is, will you embrace the disruption or resist it? Just like the children of Israel who refused to deal with the disruption God brought. They wanted to go back to Egypt because they were afraid to face the inconvenience and discomfort of change. But if God is shaking something up in your life, it is a sign that he is fixing something, changing something. And God's changes are never in vain. They always lead us to greater things, beyond what we could have imagined. Don't be afraid of disruption, and don't run from it. Don't try to hold on to what God wants to transform, because on the other side of change is a greater blessing that he has prepared all along. However, spiritual stagnation is the greatest enemy of spiritual renewal. People often pray for change, but when the opportunity comes, they reject it. They seek revival but do not want to accept true transformation. They called on God to take them to new heights, but they held on to old ways of thinking, old habits, and familiar comforts, leaving them stuck. God is always on the move, always expanding his kingdom, always calling people to deepen their relationship with him. But if we choose to stay in the familiar, we risk missing out on the wonderful plans God has for us. The Bible is filled with stories of people who were called to walk with God in movement, but chose to stand still. The story of the children of Israel in the desert is a prime example. Despite being led out of Egypt, witnessing undeniable miracles, and receiving the promise of a land flowing with milk and honey, they resisted, wanting to return to the past. Their murmuring and complaining kept them wandering for 40 years, stuck in a cycle of stagnation, never entering the land God had prepared. Or think of the Pharisees in Jesus' time. Even though they saw the power of God in Christ, heard his teachings, and witnessed his miracles, they stubbornly clung to their own traditions. Their spiritual pride clouded their eyes and caused them to miss the Savior they had long awaited, all because they wanted God to act on their terms. The disruptions in your life right now may be a sign that God is at work and bringing a needed change into your life. But if you resist because of the comfort of the present, because of fear of the new, you will hold yourself back from the growth he wants to bring. While stagnation keeps people from destiny, it makes us more likely to settle for less when God calls us to more. It makes us choose familiarity over walking in faith. But remember, there is no safety in staying where God is no longer working, nor is there safety in holding on to something he wants us to let go of. God seeks those who are willing to move with him, to change as he changes, to let go of comfort to enter into the divine. The question is, are you willing to let go of stagnation and embrace change? You may feel restless, like a voice deep within you is saying, you can't stay where you are. It is God's urging, a call to move forward, a divine signal that a new season is coming. But are you ready? Ready? Because not everyone moves when God moves. Some resist or cling to the past, the familiar, the safe. But true safety doesn't come from staying where God has been. It is found in moving in the direction He is leading. Those who refuse to move with God will fall behind. He changes to prepare His people for greater battles and greater victories. Every change is a preparation, because victory always comes with training. God never sends His people into new territory without equipping them to fight and conquer. Look at David before he was crowned. He held a sling. Before he sat on a throne, he faced a giant. God took him from the pastures to the battlefield before he became king, because David needed to learn to trust God in battle before he could lead a nation. The trials David faced with lions and bears in the desert were not random, but preparation for change. Likewise, Joseph went through great changes, from dreams of rule to betrayal, slavery, and prison. These seasons were tests to refine his character, to train his wisdom, to prepare him for the day he stood before Pharaoh to save the nations. Jesus' disciples also went through great change, from ordinary fishermen to miracle workers and evangelists, after 3 years of following him. And even after the resurrection, they needed one more step, waiting until Pentecost to receive power before they could truly step into their purpose. Without that change, they will have knowledge but not authority, a calling but not power. God does not change people just to move them. He changes them to prepare them for greater things ahead. The battles you are facing, the challenges or setbacks you are facing now, are not meant to destroy you, but to strengthen you, sharpen you, and prepare you for what is next. Maybe you are in a difficult season, battling unforeseen obstacles. Maybe God is changing you to be ready for something greater than what you can see now. Maybe the questions in your heart are your training ground. Too many people pray for victory but avoid the preparation. They want the promised land without the desert, the throne without the fight. But remember, before every advancement there is preparation, before every breakthrough there is a battle. If you feel like God is stretching you, shifting you, or taking you into battles you've never faced before, don't give up. Your biggest battles are often the gateways to your greatest victories. When God works, He often removes the familiar. What was once normal may no longer fit. Places, people, habits, even passions that once satisfied you change. This isn't a coincidence. It's a divine interruption from God to bring you to a new place. Consider Abraham, when God told him to leave his father's country, his people, and his family for a land He would show him. God didn't give him all the details or a map. He simply said, "Go." Abraham had to leave everything he was familiar with to step into the meaningful plan God had in store for him. Likewise, Moses had to leave everything he was familiar with. He was raised in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by wealth, privilege, and status. But when God changed him, Moses had to leave everything behind, flee into the desert, and spend 40 years preparing. As God begins to change you, He will pull you away from things that no longer fit your new journey. Some relationships may change, some opportunities may close, and some places will no longer feel right. If you are not careful, you can mistake change for loss, when in fact it is preparation for something greater. Look at the apostles. When Jesus called them, they were willing to leave their boats, their nets, their businesses, and even their families to answer the call. They did not know where they were going, but they knew they could not stay where they were. Because of their courage to leave behind the familiar, they stepped into history, becoming part of a destiny that would change the world. However, letting go is never easy. People often cling to the familiar for comfort and security. They are afraid to step into the unknown because it requires great faith. But remember that familiarity does not mean security. Staying where God used to be can be much more dangerous than stepping into where He is now calling you. You may be in a period of uncertainty. What used to work no longer works. What once felt meaningful now feels empty. Relationships or jobs no longer seem relevant. This could be a sign that God is changing you, calling you to something greater. Don't resist change. Don't hold on to what He is removing. What He takes away, He will replace with something better. Familiar things may be removed, but that is so He can position you for a new season with a higher purpose. Remember Abraham when he left his homeland to become the father of nations. Moses when he left Pharaoh's palace to become a deliverer of God's people. The apostles when they cast their nets to become fishers of souls. When God removes the familiar, He never leaves you empty, but opens a way that is greater than you could ever imagine. Hear the call, God is opening new opportunities, but will you have the courage to walk through the door? Some have waited for Him, but He has waited for you. He has prepared everything, laid out the path for you to walk, but the decision is yours. This is not a time for passivity or procrastination. When God changes, it is a moment of decision, to walk in faith or to wallow in fear. But one thing is certain, God will not wait forever. The Israelites had the opportunity to enter the promised land, but through hesitation and fear they missed their destiny. That generation wandered for 40 years because they did not follow the call. The question is, do you have enough faith to let go? The change in God's plan requires total surrender. You cannot cling to your own agenda or rely on your own understanding and still walk in His great purpose. Trusting in God's call requires you to relinquish control and place your complete trust in Him. Look at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Despite knowing the pain and weight of the cross that awaited Him, He surrendered completely, saying, "Not my will, but yours be done." That divine surrender brought salvation to the world. Moses was the same when God called him at the burning bush. He initially made excuses he was not qualified or a good speaker. But eventually he let go of his fear and became a great leader of Israel. He is inviting you to trust Him, even when things are beyond your understanding. He is asking you to let go of your own plans and accept His plan. Surrendering is not always easy, though, because it means giving up control. God may be inviting you into something that makes you afraid, or asking you to leave a job, relationship, or comfort zone that you are used to. He may be giving you a responsibility or assignment that doesn't seem to make sense in your current world. But if you truly want to move forward with Him, you must be willing to say, "Not my will, but yours be done." Surrender is the key to change. Abraham gave Isaac to God, and he was chosen to be the father of many nations. The disciples gave up everything they had and were used to transform the world. Jesus accepted the cross, and in doing so, His name is exalted above every name. The question today is, what is God asking you to surrender? What are you holding on to that might be preventing you from moving to the next level? Change is happening. Yet only those who are fully surrendered can enter that flow with Him. When God changes, He sometimes allows pressure to push you forward. Change doesn't usually happen in a place of comfort. It happens in a place of tension, where people have to let go of something. Many times, God will use trials, hardships, and even closing a path to move you into the next season of His grand plan. Look at Joseph. If his brother hadn't betrayed him, if he hadn't been thrown into a pit or sold into slavery, he wouldn't have gone through those challenges to stand firm in Pharaoh's palace. The hardships he encountered were actually nudges that pushed him closer to his God-given destiny. What looked like denial was actually a divine redirection. What looked like failure was actually preparation for greater callings ahead. Think of Elijah. He lived comfortably by the brook of Cherith, where God provided water and ravens brought food. But then one day the brook dried up. Why? Because God was leading him to another assignment. If the brook had never dried up, Elijah might have stayed in a place that was meant to be a temporary season. It was pressure and deprivation that drove him to the widow of Zarephath, a place where a greater miracle awaited. Even the early church faced pressure. Although Jesus commanded His disciples to go out and preach the gospel, for a long time they gathered in Jerusalem, worshiping but not following through on that mission. Then came the day of persecution, the church was scattered, and the gospel spread to many nations around the world. The enemy intended to cause harm, but God uses pressure to turn situations into opportunities for His greater purpose. You may be going through a stressful time right now. Doors that were once open are now closed. Relationships that were once easy are now difficult. Or jobs and circumstances seem more difficult than ever. But ask yourself, is God using that pressure to push you to greater heights? Difficulties that you see as negative may be tools to move you forward in His plan. Consider Abraham and Lot, a story that shows how separation is sometimes the prelude to clarity and revelation. God called Abraham to go to a land of his choosing, but Lot went along on the journey. While they were together, there was conflict, confusion, and delay. Yet, as soon as they parted, God spoke to Abraham and revealed the fullness of His promise. Many people in life are like Lot. They slow you down, bring unnecessary conflict, and hinder clarity of mind. Change sometimes requires letting go. Even Jesus experienced a moment of separation as he prepared to go to the cross. The crowd applauded him with Hosanna and then turned to chants of crucify him. Some of his closest disciples betrayed or denied him, and others scattered. But notice this, separation did not stop Jesus from fulfilling his purpose. Instead, it is part of the divine plan. Many times we resist change because we don't want to let go. We cling to relationships that have expired, habits that are holding us back, or meaningless responsibilities that are draining our energy. But understand that everything God removes is for a reason. Doors close because they were never meant to be opened. People who leave your life are a representation of your past, not your future. God is working to change your life, to remove the things that are holding you back, to refine your relationships, and to help you focus on the bigger things that are waiting for you. It is important to realize that separation is not a loss, but a preparation. Are you willing to let go of what cannot go with you? Do you trust that what is taken away will be replaced with something better? Do you have the courage to embrace change, even if it means letting go of what is familiar? Those who let go of burdens step into the wonderful plans God has in store for them. God is changing the nation, the church, lives, moving people out of old cycles, out of old ways of thinking, and out of places that were not their final destination. This is an invitation to step into a new season with courage and faith. When God brings change, he often exposes what has been hidden. Sometimes there are good and bad things beneath the surface that we never saw. Think of Job, a man of integrity, loyalty, and great blessings. But when trials came, everything he had was turned upside down, his wealth was taken away, his health was ruined, his friends turned against him. Yet, in the midst of the chaos, a deeper trust in God was formed. Job ended up with a stronger faith and a greater blessing than before. Or Peter, a companion of Jesus, witnessed to the miracles and once promised, "I will never deny you." Yet, when pressure was on, his inner fear was exposed, though not expected, and he denied Jesus 3 times. The weakness had been there all along, but it only emerged when the time was right. God did not do this to condemn him, but to point the way to restoration. When Peter repented, he became a strong, resilient leader in the early church. God did not just reveal his weakness, he also revealed the potential within him to transform his life forever. So when you face change, remember that it is an opportunity for God to usher in a new season in your life, a season that fulfills his divine purpose. Gideon thought he was the weakest in his family, small among the little ones. But when the angel of the Lord appeared and called him a mighty warrior, his transformation revealed his true nature. The same thing happened to David. Everyone saw a shepherd boy, but his transformation revealed a king. Right now, you may be facing situations that expose something deep inside you, perhaps fear, doubt, pride, or impatience. Maybe even struggles you thought you had overcome are coming to the surface. Don't be discouraged. God doesn't expose you to shame you. He does it to heal you. He exposes your inner self to help you surrender it. In doing so, he refines and prepares you for a new level and a greater purpose. The change in you is revealing a power, a divine calling, an anointing that you never knew you had. You are entering into challenges that seem beyond your ability, but in those struggles you will discover a new level of faith, authority, and power. This transformation is the key to discovering the true identity that God created you to be. The question is whether you are willing to let the change refine you, or will you resist what God is revealing. Those who accept this exposure will enter into the fullness that God intended. Nothing hidden can be healed, and nothing buried can be used. Leave everything in God's hands to bring it to light. When God changes your life, he demands absolute obedience, not delayed or half-hearted obedience, but complete and immediate obedience. The next season of your life, the next level of your calling, and the fulfillment of his promises are all tied to your willingness to obey. Sometimes God will ask you to do things that don't make sense at the time. Consider Noah, who was commanded to build an ark that had never seen rain, or the widow of Zarephath, who willingly shared her last provisions in the midst of famine when asked by Elijah. It was their obedience that led to the miracle. The widow's oil never ran out and Noah's family was saved from the flood. Or consider Naaman, a great commander who was suffering from leprosy. He almost gave up when he heard the seemingly absurd advice to immerse himself 7 times in the Jordan River. but only when he obeyed was he completely healed. Radical obedience sometimes makes no logical sense, but it is often the prerequisite for miracles to happen. Some of you are on the brink of great change, but the only thing holding you back is obedience. God has spoken and given clear direction, but hesitation or questioning holds you back. Remember, delayed obedience is disobedience, and partial obedience is not the same as complete submission. When he says go, go. When he says give, give. When he says let go, let go. Sometimes you won't see the whole picture, but that's not necessary. You just have to trust and obey. Peter didn't know he could walk on water until he dared to leave the boat. The Israelites didn't see the Jordan part until their feet touched the water. And the walls of Jericho didn't fall until they obeyed. The question is not whether God is changing, but whether you are ready to change with him. Every time God brings about change, it presents us with a choice to obey or to resist. God never forces a move. Instead, he calls, shakes, and encourages, but the decision is ours. From the beginning, he gives us the freedom to choose to follow him or to stay behind, to step into the unknown or hold on to the familiar, to trust or retreat in fear. He brings supernatural provision, a change that is not simply about where you stop, but how God sustains you on your journey as he calls you into something new. He will provide everything you need to move forward without coercion, manipulation, or struggle. God's provision will meet you in the midst of the transition. Look at the people of Israel when they were in Egypt. They lived on Pharaoh's provisions, but when God brought them out, he fed them with miracles. Supernatural manna fell from the sky, water flowed from the rock, their clothes never grew old. Though they left slavery empty-handed, they lacked nothing. Why? Because when God changed, he also provided. Think of Elijah during the famine. God led him to a brook where ravens brought food. When the brook dried up, he led him to a widow's house where the flour and oil never ran out. God's provision always follows change. What sustained you in one season may not sustain you in the next. But don't worry, God will always provide in new ways. Jesus demonstrated this in his ministry. When he needed to feed thousands, he didn't panic. He took the 5 loaves and 2 fish that were available, prayed for a blessing, and a miracle happened. When Peter needed money to pay the temple tax, Jesus directed him to go fishing, and a coin appeared in the fish's mouth. God's provision is not limited to human resources. He can bring about the unimaginable. Some people are afraid of change because they only look at their own abilities and resources. You ask yourself, how can I afford it? How can I provide for my family? How can I step into the calling when I don't have everything I need? But remember, the one who called you is the one who will sustain you. The problem is that many people resist change because they want to see provision in advance. They wait until all their immediate needs are met, but that's not how God works. He doesn't provide before you act, he provides as you move. Remember Abraham. He didn't see the ram in the bush until he walked up the mountain in obedience. The widow didn't see the oil increase until she began to pour it out. The disciples didn't see the net full of fish until they cast it to the other side. Right now, God is calling you to step into something completely new, something bigger than yourself and beyond your natural resources. But trust that if he leads you, he will provide. He will make a way where there seems to be no way, bring about what you can't do. He will release supernatural favor, unexpected blessings, and divine provision. So the question is, do you trust in your own ability or in God's provision? Those who step into the change will witness the miracle of his provision. You will not lack, you will walk through it in supernatural abundance. It may feel tense, uncomfortable, or like there is something going on right now that you don't fully understand. This is not just a temporary season, it is a supernatural change. But the real question is, are you ready? Willing to leave behind what cannot be followed? Trust him when the path is unclear. Willing to walk in obedience even when it is initially uncertain? It is time to grow, and God is about to take you where you have never been before. Now is the time for change. Step into it. Remember when God called Abraham, he had to choose whether to stay in his homeland or follow God into an unknown land. When God invited Peter to step out of the boat, he faced the decision of staying safe on the familiar surface or trustingly walking beneath the waves. Every change requires a decision, and that decision has the power to affect destiny. Right now, there are those who are on the brink of change and feel the tension in their souls. You sense that God is calling you to something greater, but fear also whispers, "What if I fail?" The enemy wants you to stay where you are safe and comfortable. But remember, there is no safety in resisting God, just as there is no security in a place where He is no longer present. Take Lot's wife, for example, who was disoriented when God led her family out of Sodom, a place with no future. The angel took them by the hand, leading them forward, but she chose to look back. She longed for what God wanted to remove, and that moment left her frozen, stuck between the past and her intended destination. Today, too, many people are stuck spiritually because they refuse to let go of what God is moving them away from. They want to experience God's newness but cling to the old. They feel torn between moving forward and looking back. Like Lot's wife, who missed out on fully entering God's plan, the truth remains: when God changes things, you cannot choose to be neutral. You cannot stand still when He asks you to move forward. Hesitating or delaying can cause you to miss out. Think of the Israelites who hesitated at the border of the Promised Land, or the rich young ruler who refused Jesus' call and walked away in grief. Think of the flood those who didn't understand the timing were left behind when the ark closed. When God brings change, He offers an invitation. But that invitation always requires a response: obedience or resistance. And you have only two choices. God's change often disrupts the familiar. It doesn't reinforce habit or create comfort. Instead, it reshapes everything: bigger, higher, different than human expectations. God does not follow a schedule or be limited by our thinking.